Wuthering Waves' 6-month anniversary was one of the greatest gifts that could have been given to the player base. The biggest dump of content we've ever seen in preparation for a new region and version of the game. Drip marketing isn't quite the right word to use here. It's more like a flood, and what's clear from the reaction across the entire community is that Kuro cooked, and proved that every single harsh critique when it came to their character design and world building was made far too quickly. The level of scrutiny across the gacha community that this company and game were under since its launch was absolutely absurd. And now that Kuro's finally had the time to fully flesh out their vision for this game, it's safe to say that they know exactly what they're doing. It's beyond fair to say that Wuthering Waves' patches were a bit lacking ever since the huge map expansion we've had in version 1.1. There are a lot of well-justified reasons for that, and today we'll be taking the time to explore what those reasons are. A lot of people have been saying gacha's dead for the latter half of 2024, but when Wuthering Waves is just one game in an industry dominated by giants, who's really to blame for that? As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. When designing Renita, the devs promised that the entire region would be a co-creation between Kuro Games and the player base, promising that the concerns that players raised across version 1.0, with its sparse interaction between playable characters, odd story pacing, and lack of life in the overworld, would be answered. And Renita, with its vibrant city setting, lively atmosphere, and abundance of interactivity, even among its echoes, is the breath of fresh air that everybody was looking for after 6 months of grinding in desecrated areas like the Desert Highlands or the port city of Guizhou. When you factor in the massive shift in tone in Braguna compared to Jinzhou, and even Mount Firmament and the Black Shores, the difference is clear. This city is alive, and with the introduction of sentient echoes that walk, talk, and interact with each other just like people, the possibilities for storytelling and interactivity across 2.0's quests are higher than ever. Unless this teaser is the biggest bait in gacha gaming, Kuro Games is promising a lot in Renita just from its setting alone, and that promise becomes even more significant when we review its immaculate drip marketing and cast of playable characters. Kuro took the critiques of a bland, dark color palette in their 1.0 roster to heart when designing their newest additions to the roster, with the most unique blend of aesthetics we've seen thus far. There are 50 shades of magenta, and plenty of other colors on these characters, even if their attribute is clearly something like Glacio. Just like with Carlotta, we saw a similar betrayal of an attribute's typical color with the release of Shorekeeper, having a blue thematic while dealing spectral damage, and the fact that Kuro's opened that level of artistic freedom in their designs means that any future release has that same level of potential. And that's just the colors. The outfits these characters are wearing are also some of the most unique, fashionable, and tasteful we've ever seen. Baggy pantsuits, deep-cut nautical v-necks, and gothic dresses are an aesthetic that we just haven't seen before. It's a dazzling blend of modern design, classical themes, and straight-up Pirates of the Caribbean. If nobody in this lineup fits the bill for you, you've got to be one of the pickiest people on the planet. This diversity, and perhaps most importantly, departure from gooner bait allegations, can only make this game more and more accessible to a wider portion of the gaming population. Kuro's checked off a lot of the boxes when it comes to their character design in Renita, and the reaction to their half-anniversary bomb is the only confirmation we need. These characters are hype, and once again, we can see that Kuro's limited content across versions 1.2 to 1.4 wasn't because of some lack of budget, manpower, or resources. It's because they were dedicating so much of their development time towards crafting this unbelievably beautiful region and designing this awesome cast of characters. That incredible aesthetic didn't end with their outfits. These characters are also offering some of the most interesting or mysterious combinations of weapons we've seen in Solaris, with popular combinations like gunblades, magical staves, a sword and pistol combo, and a tie. All of these characters are promising unique attack animations that will vary wildly from existing wielders on the roster. We've seen what these developers can make firsthand, and if there's one thing Kuro didn't sacrifice across version 1.0, it was the quality of their limited characters' kits. There's no reason for them to stop now. One of the biggest challenges Kuro Games faced across all of version 1.0 was the massive pivot they made when it came to storytelling and world building. According to developer interviews, this shift was one of the hardest parts of the development process across the early months of release, and with that explanation in mind, it makes sense why there seemed to be so little content surrounding the actual main story quest and its progression across the latter half of the version in calendar year. Instead, patches were dedicated to developing the cultural significance of Jinzhou and its festivals in 1.0 1.2, the background lore of the Black Shores, the Tethys system, and Rover's past in 1.3, and the reveal of the Somme Noir's potential for individual character story progression in 1.4. While rewriting the story to better fit the developer and player's vision for the future of Wuthering Waves, Kuro dedicated their updates around laying the groundwork and establishing the foundation for the real story in Wuthering Waves, what we'll be experiencing in 2.0. They rewarded their player base with one of the best half-anniversary gifts possible, an absurd amount of hype for Renita driven by the reveal of its incredible cast of characters, and uniquely refreshing setting present in this European-inspired region. With systems like the Elusive Realm, Tethys' simulations, and the Black Shores as a home base firmly established in the tail end of 1.0, Kuro set up the player base with all the tools they'll need to experience Renita to the fullest, with all of these existing features directly applicable to the newest members of the roster. And with the PS5 version releasing with 2.0, Wuwa's incorporation of their skip button will let those new players experience the best that Wuwa has to offer in record time, minimizing the clunky pacing issues we all experienced back in 1.0. I've always said that Kuro Games made enjoying their game as easy as possible, and that's only going to continue in 2.0. Gacha might have died in 2024, and Wuthering Waves' backloaded development for 2.0 definitely contributed to the problem. But the fact of the matter is that Kuro Games was making a massive investment in Renita across the latter half of 2024, and they're only one developer in an industry dominated by a giant, with a lot more funding, advertising, and budget. When you look at what Kuro's been able to produce as a result of their investment, you can't help but wonder why a company like Hoyoverse, with 3 massive titles in the genre, weren't able to save gacha in 2024. Kuro had an excuse. We witnessed it live on November 22nd. What is Hoyoverse's? Where is all that money from FOMO-fueled banners and predatory practices going? It certainly isn't back into the games themselves. Kuro Games openly admitted in interviews the struggles across their development process to the player base. They dedicated a majority of their livestream towards reaffirming their commitment to the game and their players. They promised that they would listen to critiques and implement changes that would satisfy the player base. They followed through on all of their promises in version 1.0, and with all of these reveals for 2.0, they've done nothing but repeat that very same dedication. This game has received a lot of criticism, some of it justified, but a lot of it was completely unwarranted. Many are simply unfamiliar with a developer that genuinely plays and enjoys their own game, and makes changes in line with that philosophy over making as much profit as possible. This is the company that sells limited character dupes in their shop. With a developer like this, it'll only get easier and easier to enjoy this game. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out.